Shalom Israel. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, all honor, all glory to Yahweh by Hashem, Yahushai, by Hashem Kakadash, that one of the apostles and other great millstone for teaching us truth, peace, and blessings to the hopeful like visible in Shalom. Yahweh is the name of the influential in Hebrew. By Hashem means the name, and Yahushai is the name of the begotten Son. Background lesson. And today, we're going to go into these uproars of the people in the world as you're seeing the riots and the protests that are taking place. And specifically right here in Chicago, which I'm about to play two quick videos just to go into the situation at hand and why they are rioting and protesting, as well as it being another end time sign, and going to show we're getting closer and closer to the end. So play this real quick and probably get one or two articles to go a little more into it, more in depth.
Chaos has erupted in downtown Chicago. There are reports of hundreds of teenagers smashing car windows, getting into fights, robbing people, and there are reports of multiple shots being fired. This is the second night in a row where hundreds of teens in Chicago have met up after seeing flyers posted on social media for a mass meetup. Friday night's meetup ended with a Tesla being set on fire and a 14-year-old boy being shot. And then tonight's meetup ended with two teens being shot, aged 16 and 17, and a massive police response. It's being said that these gatherings have started as a social media trend, but as soon as we have more concrete details, I'll keep you guys updated. Chaos.
There you go. And guess what? More chaos is to come, as you see in the title. Upwards of the people of the world, and more to come, as you've been seeing riots and protests taking place pretty much all over the world. Dealing with over there in Paris, Brazil, and many other locations. And that's just once again another example of what's to come to Babylon the Great, aka America, as you're slowly seeing things starting to get more heated as days progress. Dealing with many other situations, especially just coming to the last days, things are only, going to get worse. As many scripts touch on and go into how we're heading some, times that we have never seen before all throughout history. Showing how bad and terrible it's really going to get. Which can lead to, more lockdowns, them shutting this place down, and, implementing harsher restrictions, curfews, and all that, implementing martial law when things get too chaotic, which is ultimately the type of reaction that they want in order to, gain more control, to have a tighter grip onto the people. Especially what you see what they're doing with the Walmarts on that. If you watch my latest lesson, now it's
tonight in Los Angeles.
And you already see, a few months back, or a couple months ago, they implemented that purge law over there. So now you're going to see, less of a, response to certain things, Because you're seeing this happen in many stores. You saw what they did in the streets, trampling on cars and all that. And ultimately, they're just giving these devils ammo to, come down with that great rat and, bring that Herod down, and to be justified when they start, shooting people down. As you saw, they, took out like 2 teens. Alright, you see the point right there. Now let's dive into probably one article, but I just looked up, Chicago riots. It says teen riots in downtown Chicago, smashing cars, windows, and attacking tourists. Excuse me. How the hundreds of teenagers fled into downtown Chicago, smashing car windows, prompting police, looting and rioting, breakout in Chicago's Magnificent Mile. Probably to get this one right here. Now we'll dive into the few scripts I got. It's a short lesson to the spirit. Usually when I say it's short, it goes on for nearly 30 plus minutes. But I'm going to keep this short. Now it says hundreds of teenagers fled into downtown Chicago, smashing car windows, prompting police response. That you just saw recently, what I just read. 2 shot as hundreds of teens crowded down to Chicago, prompting police response, as you just saw right there once again. And that video we just played referencing those 2 teenagers being shot. Now hundreds of teenagers flooded into downtown Chicago on Saturday night, smashing car windows, trying to get into Millennium Park, prompting a major police response. At least one person in a car was attacked. And this is going to cause, these devils to, tighten their grip and, as you see, using force, shooting people down. And ultimately, you're giving them the ammo to do so, to be justified. Shots were fired near the corner of Madison and Michigan, and Fox 32 Chicago decided that it was unsafe to keep our news crew on the scene 2 teens were wounded by gunfire in the crowds in the first block of East Washington Street. A 16 and 17-year-old boy were taken to Northeastern Memorial Hospital in fair condition with gunshot wounds. So ultimately, you're seeing the chaos that's erupting, and ultimately what's more to come. Because that's just a small example of the type of chaos that's getting ready to erupt in the midst of Babylon the Great. As you're seeing just a few examples of what's happening in other locations all around the world. And that's another end-time sign, as I mentioned in the beginning lesson, an end-time prophecy. People say, it's been happening all these years, this and that. Well, guess what? It's becoming more frequent. It's becoming more heavier and more deadlier. Luke 21 and 25. Because now they're starting to, use a lot more drastic measures and all that. You had an article I went into a few months back, as well as many other brothers have touched on. You have the police force given authorization to use killer robots, So this may lead them to, shut this place down, implement martial law, holding checkpoints, having robots patrol the streets, curfews. You're going to see how these things, can lead up to that. But Luke 21:25, and also mentioning how these devils are losing, their power, they're slowly losing their kingdom. Because now you're seeing that the people, in this nation are not, agreeing, with the leaders, people that are in control, and it's getting a lot more chaotic. Just, throw it out there. In Luke 21:25, it says, "And should be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars, and upon the earth the stress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring," which is the main point. And upon the earth the stress of nations with perplexity. You're seeing uproars, you're seeing riots, you're seeing people killing each other. I'm looking happened a few months back when Roe v. Wade was overturned. You see America divided, which is another terrible sign for a nation, a kingdom, is when your people is divided amongst each other, especially against the leaders. Now, continue on, Matthew 24:3-8, to add on to that point, to go into how these are end time signs. Now it says, "And he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came up to him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be signs of the coming of the end of the world?" Now it's going to list out those signs that we receive that take place before Lord Yahushua will make his grand return, as you're seeing these things now. And Yahushua answered and said to them, "Take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I'm anointed, and shall deceive many." Already seen many false prophets being exposed for their works, the true intentions, what they're really about. And you should really know by now who your true teachers are and who's really, for Yahweh Shema Shai and the waking of the elect. Verse 6, you see a lot of these guys are, wolves in sheep clothing. A bunch of ravening wolves, seeking to fill, their own bellies, man, their own lust. Verse 6. Main point is verse 7, but verse 6. "And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars," which I saw an article going into, I believe, the U.S. and South Korea are going to do, I believe, missile testings or, practice runs of, I forgot the exact title of the article, but just going to show how high the tensions are between the nations. As you saw recently, North Korea doing that missile testing, missile landing over there next to Japan. So tensions are high, Now you're going to start seeing these more of these nations start to, showcase their might, their power, as you see in that, as it's mentioned in that article, of what America and I believe South Korea is about to do. So, at least you want. "See that you be not troubled, for all these must come to pass, but the end is not yet." Main point, verse 7. "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places." And you're starting to see people go against each other, fighting, killing, as well as you're seeing famines brewing. Which there was a recent article came out of 18,000 plus cows killed. I believe there was a farm that I believe blew up. And you have now chicken farms, egg farms being lit ablaze on fire. So you see a famine that's going to obviously brew from that, and see a scarcity of food, which is ultimately these devils. It's not a coincidence that you see these things being lit on fire. You have 18,000 plus cows killed. Wouldn't you think there would be more safety precautions to keep that from happening? To keep the food supply, stable? Come on. As well as these earthquakes are taking place pretty much all over the world, plagues, pestilence that you are seeing. Verse 8, "All these are the beginning of sorrows." We're just in the beginning of this, man. The Lord has barely begun to roll that ball, man. And that ball's going to roll down the hill. Guess what's going to pick up speed? You start seeing more and more things start to happen and take place. As Scripture also mentioned in Matthew 24, the 22nd verse. Going to accept those days should be shortened. No flesh should be saved, but for your elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So Yahweh says, hasten these days. So we're seeing so many things happen and taking place, and also a telltale sign of we're getting closer and closer to our Lord's return, man. That this place is about to be destroyed. So that's why it's important to seek out Yahweh Shai before it's too late, man. Because you don't want to be part of that number that's left behind and caught up in the midst of this coming destruction, man. This is chaos that's getting ready to show up. You're about to have people breaking into homes, killing each other over the lack of food, as the scriptures also mention, which we may get. Because now you're going to see, famine brewing, and you already know how chaotic people are, when they're without food for a certain period of time. When people have families to take care of, kids to feed, what do you think they're going to do? Drastic measures. You already saw what happened when the egg prices were pretty much skyrocketed. Now you see egg farms being lit ablaze. You see the scarcity of that even more, and inflation continuing to rise. You have people camping outside Walmart, trying to steal food. Especially coming these last days, this is gonna get a lot worse, man. We're saying these things right here, but it's only going to pick up, man. It's only going to stack up. Now, verse 15, you didn't even read it yet. Now it says, for the sword and the destruction draw at 9, when people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. And what's the modern day sword? The gun, the weapons. Excuse me. 21. Verse 16, main point. For there should be sedition among men, and invading one another, should not regard their kings nor princes, going to the people that are in power and authority, dealing with your mayors, your presidents, and the course of the action shall stand in their power. So we're starting to see these sedition among men taking place pretty much everywhere, and it's going to the word sedition for edification's sake. Bear for a minute. Now it says incitement of resistance or insurrection against lawful authority. And you get the point right there. Which usually when I look it up, it will show you the definitions, just within that little box. But now you have to actually go to the site to look for what you want. But ultimately, that's what we need. Just nothing more of it. Now, let's go back a verse. Verse 17. A man shall desire to go into a city and should not be able to go into these lockdowns, these checkpoints that they're starting to be holding, these curfews and all these different things that they're going to establish and implement to ultimately push people into a corner and force you to make a choice, to where if you want to live a so-called normal life and do the basic things that you used to do, it's going to come at a price, and it's going to need to be you taking that charagma, which is going to be the RFID C-HIP. Which you pretty much see the foundation and the infrastructure already being established and ready to pretty much push it out any day now, Now, let's get a few more scriptures, and like I said, we shut down from there. Let's get Matthew up here, and we'll read the last few scripts I got. It's Matthew 12 and 25, and this is our Lord speaking right here, Yahweh Shai. And Yahweh Shai knew their thoughts, and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. So Esau, Edom's kingdom is literally on its last legs. That's why you see Revelation 12 and 12, how these devils are going to come down with that great wrath, because they know they have but a short time. These devils are literally grasping at straws, man, doing everything in their power in order to try to continue to rule and continue to keep their kingdom running. So now you're going to see them very soon to start, pretty much say F it and bringing that hammer down. Come down with great wrath, start to force and implement their plans and put them into action as fast as possible. But guess what? Yahweh Shai is not going to allow it. It'll stop you in your tracks. Because it goes to how also prideful this devil is, thinks he's going to fulfill his plans and everything that he wants. But as it's going to, the Lord has set bounds that he cannot pass. You set the rule for a certain period of time, and guess what? You're going to fulfill everything that you want. Now, Matthew 12:25 one more time. Yahweh knew their thoughts and said to them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. So it's going to crumble. As I mentioned in the beginning of the lesson, Esau Edom is slowly losing their kingdom, their power, man. And you can tell by the way of the people, This devil being exposed for his true intentions, the things that he has done. He's not able to get away with certain things as he used to, Now let's go over these last few scriptures. This is book of 2 Timothy 3 and 1. Now it says this, now also in that last days, perilous times shall come, which I could have got a few more scriptures, but like I said, I want to keep this lesson a little bit short. Because I got a few of these scriptures I pulled out in the last lesson. So I want to get this point across. There's now also in the last days, perilous times shall come. So going to show we're heading some very evil and scary times, man. And that Yahweh Shema Shai is not playing any games. And if you don't repent and take heed, this is what you're about to be caught in the midst of, man. And it's just a small example of what's to come. You're about to see it get a lot worse. Now, 2 Ezra 1 through 4, and he answered me then and said, measures all time diligently in itself. Now, how do we measure the times that we are in? By the way of these prophecies and these signs that we are given. As we read earlier, guess what? We're nearing the end. Putting by the Matthew 24, 3rd through the 8th verse, as well Luke 21 and 25. And when thou seest part signs past, which I have told thee before, then shalt thou understand that at the very same time when the highest begin to visit the world which he made, which is the main point is verse 3. Therefore, when there shall be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, as you're seeing now, seeing these riots, seeing these protests, and guess what? These things are not letting up. You're seeing a riot take place pretty much daily. A new thing popping up left and right. These things are not dying down, which is a terrible sign for a kingdom, man. A great sign for those in this truth, because going to show this place is coming to a near end. Verse 4, which I don't know if I finished verse 3. Therefore, when there should be seen earthquakes and uproars of the people in the world, then shalt that word understand that the Most High spake of those things from the days before thee, even from the beginning. So showing we're nearing the end. Now let's get Habakkuk 2 and 3 to close it out, to wrap it all together. Now it says, and we'll read a little bit of this right here, and we'll get the NLT version. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. What is that vision? Let's get the NLT. As the vision is for a future time, dealing with these prophecies, man, and we are in those appointed times as written and spoken of in the scriptures. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end shall speak and not lie, though it tarry, wait for it, because it is sure to come. It will not tarry, meaning it will not delay. So these things will happen and will come to pass. As you know, Yahweh Shema Shai is not a liar. And the scripture going to how every word shall not return to him void, meaning not return to him empty. So everything's going to come to pass and be fulfilled as the Lord sent out to do. So pretty much the main point of the lesson already. Make a quick lesson going to these Chicago riots and these protests that you are seeing. But it's not really a protest, but just, dealing with everything that you are seeing pretty much taking place all over the world. But this particular situation right here, dealing with these riots. But Lord's will get that point across and you are edified. I do want to give all praises, all honor, all glory to Yahweh by Shema Shai, by Shem Kakadash. That born to the apostles and all great military teaching this truth, peace and blessings to the whole collective Israel. Shalom.